The studio lights burned hotter than the truth ever could. Tonight, the air held a secret, one that would unravel before the cameras stopped rolling. The set gleamed under a cascade of LED panels, a sterile white stage framed by sleek black panels. The audience, a sea of eager faces, buzzed with anticipation, their whispers blending with the hum of equipment. A lone chair sat center stage, waiting for its occupant, while the host's desk angled sharply to the side, a subtle power play. Low droned the air thrummed with expectation, the kind that precedes a storm. Tom Cruise strode in, his walk a study in controlled energy. His navy suit was crisp, but the top button of his shirt was undone, a small rebellion against the polished setting. His eyes scanned the room, quick, predatory, before settling on the audience with a megawatt smile. Yet his left hand twitched, just once, as he adjusted his cuff. What was he hiding behind that grin? George Stephanopoulos leaned forward, his suit a muted gray, his smile practiced but sharp. Tom, welcome. It's been a while since you've done a sit-down like this. Feeling exposed yet? His tone was light, but his eyes glinted with intent. Tom chuckled, a low, easy sound. Exposed? George, I've jumped out of planes. This is just a chair. The audience laughed, but his fingers tapped the armrest, a rhythm too fast for calm. Was that a joke or a warning? George leaned back, crossing his arms. Let's start easy. Mission Impossible, another blockbuster. How do you keep topping yourself? His voice was warm, but his posture said he was probing for more. Tom's smile didn't waver. It's about the audience, George. Giving them something real, something they can feel in their bones. His voice was earnest, almost philosophical, but his eyes flicked to the side, as if checking an invisible exit. The audience clapped lightly, charmed. George nodded, jotting a note. Real, huh? So, what's real for Tom Cruise off-screen? Family, maybe? Your kids, they must be proud. The question landed softly, but it carried an edge. Tom's jaw tightened, just for a split second. They're great, George. Private, though. Let's keep it on the movies. His tone was polite, but the room felt a degree colder. Why was he dodging something so simple? The audience shifted, a murmur rippling through. George pressed on. Fair enough. But fans are curious, your life's a mystery. Ever think about letting them in? His smile was all teeth now, a shark circling. Tom leaned forward, his voice dropping. Mystery's what makes it fun, don't you think? People don't need to know everything. A few in the audience chuckled, but others whispered, sensing the shift. Murmur, was he challenging George, or the whole room? George's eyes narrowed, but he kept his tone playful. Sure, but you're a public guy. Scientology, for instance, still a big part of your life? The question was a dart, thrown with precision. Tom's laugh was sharp, almost a bark. You're going there already? Come on, George, I thought we'd at least get to dessert first. The audience roared, but his hand gripped the armrest, knuckles whitening. The producer in the booth, a woman in a headset, shot a glance at her colleague, her lips pursed. How long could Tom keep deflecting? George didn't blink. Desserts later. Scientology's been a lightning rod for you. Any regrets? The audience leaned forward, a collective intake of breath. Gasp. Tom's smile faded, his eyes locking onto George's. Regrets? I don't live in the past, George. I move forward. Always. His voice was steady, but there was a fire behind it, a warning. The audience clapped, but it was uneven, hesitant. Was that fire about to burn the whole stage down? The producer gestured frantically from the booth, her hands slicing across her throat. George ignored her, leaning closer. Forward's great, but let's talk money. Those stunts, expensive. Ever worry the studios will say no? His voice was smooth, but the question was a blade. Tom tilted his head, his smile returning, but it was colder now. Worry? Nah. I make them money, George. Lots of it. The audience laughed, but it was louder now, charged. A man in the front row clapped too hard, his face flushed. Was Tom's confidence unshakable, or was it a mask? George scribbled another note, his pen scratching loudly in the sudden quiet. Money talks, sure. But what about the personal cost? You've been at this for decades. Ever feel alone up there? The question hung in the air, heavy as smoke. Tom's eyes flickered, a shadow crossing his face. Alone? I've got a team, fans, a purpose. That's enough. His voice was firm, but his fingers stopped tapping, frozen. The audience was silent, waiting. Had George finally cracked the armor? George leaned in, his voice low, almost intimate. Purpose is powerful, Tom. But what happens when the cameras stop? When it's just you, no stunts, no script? The question was a grenade, and the pin was already pulled. Tom stared at him, unblinking. The studio was deathly still, the audience holding its breath. Silence then, slowly, deliberately, Tom reached up and unclipped his microphone. The tiny click echoed like a gunshot. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. George, he said, his voice calm but laced with steel. Some things aren't for sale. He dropped the mic onto the chair, the thud reverberating through the speakers. The audience gasped, then erupted into a mix of cheers and boos. Chaos. George shot to his feet, his smile gone. Tom, come on, let's talk this out. His voice was desperate, but the producer was already signaling to cut to commercial. The lights dimmed, but Tom was already walking off, his silhouette vanishing into the wings. His face was pale, his hands gripping the desk. The audience was on its feet, some clapping, some shouting. The producer's voice crackled through his earpiece. What the hell was that? Cliffhanger action. Would Tom come back, or had he just ended the show for good? The studio was a war zone of whispers as the lights came up. The audience, still buzzing from Tom's exit, clutched their phones, thumbs flying across screens. Social media was already ablaze. #CruiseWalkout trended within minutes, clips of the mic drop racking up millions of views. Headlines screamed, Cruise storms off set. Stephanopoulos pushes too far? Buzz of voices. The producer, Karen, stormed the control booth, her headset dangling. George, you idiot, you broke him, she hissed, her face flushed. Backstage, Tom stood in a dimly lit hallway, his breath steady but his eyes distant. He leaned against the wall, the hum of the studio fading behind him. A young assistant hovered, offering water, but Tom waved her off with a tight smile. I'm fine, he said, though his voice was quieter than usual, almost reflective. What was he thinking in that moment of solitude? George, still on set, forced a grin as the cameras rolled back. Well, folks, that's live TV for you. The audience laughed nervously, but their eyes darted to the wings, hoping for Tom's return. George's hands shook slightly as he shuffled his notes. We'll take a quick break, but stick around. The producer's voice crackled in his ear. Fix this, George, or we're done. Could George salvage the wreckage, or was the show already lost? Outside, the internet churned. Posts flooded in. Tom's a legend for walking out, countered by. George was just doing his job. A fan account with 50,000 followers posted a grainy clip of Tom's silhouette in the hallway, captioned, He's had enough. The comments exploded, some called him a diva, others a hero. Whose side was the world really on? Tom's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his daughter Isabella. Dad, you okay? Saw the clip. He stared at it, his thumb hovering over the reply button, but he didn't type. Instead, he slipped the phone back into his pocket and straightened up. His jaw tightened, and he muttered to himself. Not like this. Was he planning to go back, or walk away for good? The green room was a stark contrast to the stage, dim, cluttered, smelling faintly of coffee and stale air. Tom sat on a worn couch, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up. George entered, his tie loosened, his face a mix of defiance and regret. Door creaked, the air between them crackled, no cameras to soften the edges. Tom, listen. George started, but Tom cut him off with a raised hand. You went too far, George. His voice was low, steady, but there was a rawness to it, like a wound freshly opened. You think this is just a game? Push the buttons, get the ratings? Was Tom calling out George, or the entire industry? George sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. It's my job, Tom. People want the real you, not the movie star mask. His tone was sharp, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. You can't just walk out when it gets tough. Tom laughed, a bitter sound. Real? You don't want real. You want a circus. He leaned forward, his gaze piercing. You ever think about what it costs me to sit there, to let you dig into my life? The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Would George finally see Tom's side, or double down? Outside, the fallout spread. At a bar across town, a group of Tom's fans watched the clip on a loop, cheering his defiance. That's our guy, one said, raising a glass. But on a late-night talk show, a comedian mocked the walkout. Tom Cruise running from questions faster than he runs in his movies. The audience roared, but some winced. Camera split shot. The world was splitting, Team Tom versus Team George. How would this divide shape their legacies? Back in the green room, George leaned forward, his voice softer now. I didn't mean to cross a line, Tom. But you're not untouchable. People deserve to know who they're cheering for. His words were earnest, but there was a spark of defiance in his eyes, a refusal to fully back down. Tom stood, pacing. Deserve? Nobody deserves my life on a platter. Not you, not them. He gestured toward the studio, where the audience was still murmuring. I give them everything, my work, my heart. Isn't that enough? His voice cracked, just slightly, and he turned away, staring at a blank wall. Was this the most vulnerable Tom had ever been? Karen burst in, her face pale. You too, enough. The network's freaking out. X is calling it a meltdown. We need you back out there, both of you. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was firm. George glanced at Tom, who didn't move. Tense silence. Would they return together, or let the chaos reign? The studio lights were softer now, the audience quieter. Tom and George walked back out, side by side, but the space between them felt like a canyon. The crowd erupted, a mix of cheers and murmurs, unsure what to expect. George spoke first, his voice steady but subdued. Folks, we had a moment there. But we're here to talk, not fight. He glanced at Tom, who nodded slightly. Tom took his seat, his microphone reattached. I'm back because I respect you, he said, looking at the audience, not George. But respect goes both ways. The crowd clapped, some standing, their applause a fragile bridge. Could this gesture heal the rift, or was it too late? George took a breath, choosing his words carefully. Tom, I pushed too hard. I'm sorry. The admission was quiet, but it landed like a thunderclap. The audience gasped, then clapped, their relief palpable. Tom's eyes softened, but he didn't smile. Appreciated, George. Let's move on. His tone was civil, but guarded, a man still holding his ground. Applause. The interview wrapped quickly, sticking to safer ground, movies, stunts, the future. But the air was different now, heavier with unspoken truths. As the credits rolled, Tom shook George's hand, a firm grip, no warmth. The audience clapped, but it was a release, not a celebration. In the days that followed, the story faded from the headlines, replaced by newer scandals. George went back to his desk, his questions a little softer, his edge dulled by reflection. Tom returned to his set, jumping from helicopters, but his quiet moments were longer now, his thoughts deeper. Had they both learned something, or nothing at all? A week later, a fan posted on X. Saw Tom and George's handshake. Respect won, right? The replies were mixed. Some saw strength in Tom's walkout, others admired George's apology. But the question lingered, unanswered, in the digital ether. Who really won, the man who walked away, or the one who stayed? What's the cost when the world demands your soul for a show? Tell us below.